Is This a Ghost is sponsored by Pickney Bend Distillery. Patrick, we made a huge mistake.
What do you mean?
I was listening to the Witch of Saratoga episode today. And if you recall, when we recorded that episode, we started doing very hyper-targeted ads. I did one for you, and then you thought
Patrick Engine Optimized. Yeah, I recall. Yeah.
Well, that seems to have gone over pretty big. And my friend and yours, Jordan Quattlebaum, friend of the show, big-time listener, reached out. And his birthday, as we are recording, is tomorrow. And all he wants for his birthday is a really hyper-targeted Pickney Bend ad. So it's going to be late. It's going to be about a week late for him.
Right.
But I think it's good. I think we'll do one that's targeted to Jordan Quattlebaum. And that'll be good because it would take us normally 3 years to get to the Quattlebaums.
Yeah, easily.
Yes. So I thought maybe you've met Jordan a handful of times, certainly. You know Jordan
absolutely.
Fairly well. So I thought you could start us off here.
Sure.
Go ahead.
So Jordan, who's personally my favorite Jordan, and that's again, of all the Jordans.
Yeah.
Okay. That is among Michael Jordan.
Yep.
That is among Jordan from The Great Gatsby. I think there's a woman named Jordan in there, isn't it? Yeah.
All right, you keep going. I'm going to Google.
You should Google that. And all the other Jordans.
What other Jordan Spaeth? That's someone. Who's that?
Jordan Spaeth? I don't.
Is that a person? Is that a Jordan?
I don't think so.
I can't talk and
Michael B. Jordan? Also way above Michael B. Jordan. That guy is just intimidating. I've never been intimidated. Yeah.
I'll be honest. I love Jordan Quattlebaum. He's a great Jordan. Michael B. Jordan is pretty good.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, so to my second favorite Jordan of all time, behind only the inimitable Michael B. Jordan.
I hate that you are correct that Jordan Baker is a character.
Oh my gosh. Was that a literary reference?
Yeah, that does make me real upset. Hey, Jeremy, cut all that. Cut everything where Patrick knew more about literature than me. That's not good for my whole thing. So let's just cut that. Anyway, you only know Michael Jordan. No other Jordans that you've ever heard of, huh, Pat?
That's the only ones on earth, as far as I'm concerned.
Anyway, what about Jordan do you think that would pair well with Pickney Bend?
Probably his glasses. You drink whiskey from glasses. Jordan has glasses. So
That's true.
And that's about it.
If you want to drink whiskey in glasses and be reminded of the fact that you also have glasses that are different but are named the same thing, and if you also live in just outside of Kansas City a little bit, then I think Pickney Bend is the distillery for you. So I don't know if hyper targeting works for every person. Now that we're doing this, I think
we're 2 for 2, frankly. I really do.
Okay, great. Well, Jordan and everyone, go to PINCKNEYBEND.com and check out all the really, truly amazing stuff Pickney Bend has to offer. The holidays are coming up, and they make great gifts if you can get them. So get your hands on those on
those puppies.
On the puppies, the gin puppies, not Jordan. Don't get your hands on Jordan. He doesn't.
No,
he's a loving person, but he has his limits. Yeah. And happy birthday, Jordan. And sorry, Pickney Bend. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Is This a Ghost? I'm Clayton Smith. And every week I tell a real ghost story from real history to my real friend, Patrick Dean, who unfortunately does not take it real seriously. But that's okay. That's okay. Tell me about this shirt that you're wearing. You look like you are Elvis Presley in Jailhouse Rock.
Hey,
except for the face and head.
I mean, obviously,
but the moves are there.
Am I Austin Butler in Jailhouse Rock? Maybe.
Could be.
Okay.
Could be.
All right.
Could be. Okay. Yeah.
Moving in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had to. This is why I would have wore to work today, except I can't wear collared shirts for a little while because all the. Oh, I have stitches. I have stitches now. On the outside.
Where? On the outside?
So did you ever notice whenever you and I were hanging out that I had an unsightly and troubling lump taking over most of the back of my neck?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say anything about it. It felt
well,
uncomfortable to talk about, but yeah.
So since nobody said anything about it, I didn't even realize it was there for the last 10 years. And all of a sudden,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. So, no, the dermatologist chopped the whole thing off and gave me 8 stitches. So
that's not too bad.
No, I mean, it's a normal amount of stitches to get in your neck.
Better on the outside than the inside, huh?
There's some on the inside as well, actually.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right. So,
and now you're fine.
I'm fine. Should I be recording?
I am. This. Are you? Are they biopsying anything or?
Yeah, they biopsy it or whatever.
Yeah, they biopsy everything.
Yeah.
Like totally. Did I tell you about how I had a cyst in the roof of my mouth?
You mentioned it, and they were like, it might be lethal or cancer or something.
Yeah, we'll let you know. And I was like, okay, sooner the better, I guess. It was fine. Most things are fine.
Yeah, it wasn't cancer.
No, still here.
I mean, it's been a while, I guess.
Yeah. Oh boy, this is great.
Yeah. We may want to just give it maybe 60 more seconds. June is still literally just jumping up and down and screaming right above me right now. So
cool.
Just let that peter out a little bit.
Just sit here quietly.
Mm-hmm. Sure. How was your week? You were in Cali. You're in the land of the rising sun.
Land of the hot sun. It was 75, 80 degrees. Woo. I wore shorts. Took those legs out for a walk. It was nice. And I came back here and it was snowing and 23 degrees. So I miss it a lot. And since I got back, I've been working just so much. I heard you're now in charge of all the classes. It feels like it.
All of them.
Feels like it. I was teaching 4 2 weeks ago, and now I'm teaching 9. So it's a big jump. And one of the I got a text yesterday at 4:30 p.m. saying, "Hey, so sorry to ask this, but could you take over one more class?" And I said, "I don't know. I've already taken over 4 extras. That feels like a lot." And they were like, "I know it's an emergency." I said, "Okay, maybe. What is it and when is it?" And they said, "Well, it's in 2 hours." And I said, "I'm at a bar." But
they're like, is it a bar near campus though? Right. That's the important thing.
Yeah, it was an online class, so I made it home and I taught a class for a few hours on the internet last night with no prep. And that's my life.
Did the kids tell? Like, can they tell if you come in like really fucking unprepared?
Well, I think normally, but except here's the thing. I think the faculty member who I am replacing, I think was not very good. And so even my no prep, I think was better than her full prep.
This is fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so it's going okay. I'm fooling all of them into thinking that I am normal and fine and not losing my mind.
In the middle of all this, you have found time somehow to research a podcast.
Well, I found time to record a podcast.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get into that. This is a good time to say, I was going to save this for later, so I don't know how they're going to cut it together, but this is a good time to say, we owe a huge, and I mean huge thank you to our dear friend and unpaid intern, Jen Swanson, who, upon learning that my life became so much busier on such short notice, she actually offered to do the research for tonight's show. And
wow, holy cow!
And which I very, very gratefully accepted.
Man.
So tonight's episode was researched by Jen.
That's fantastic.
It's amazing, and she did a great job.
Yeah. Yes. Now, are you gonna have to add back in all of your like mispronunciations and
I did have to go through and change her notes to be more Clayton-ish. Yeah. So I changed the pronunciations of lots of the words. Made some. I took out her good jokes and put in some bad jokes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So it's gonna be exactly. So I think it's gonna be great. But she did, and I think she's gonna do the next couple weeks going forward while I finish out this semester. So I truly am so grateful. Thank you, Jen, and everyone. Hey, this is a good time to remind everyone that Jen and Jeremy both do so much work for this show and such incredible work, and they get, I mean, literally nothing in return. And so this is a good reminder to tell you all that, once again, if you can, just take a second and share this with people that you think will like it, because the more people listen to this podcast, the more likely it is that we can find sponsors who pay us in not just whiskey, but whiskey money. Yep. And once we get whiskey money, we'll spend ours on whiskey still, but then we can also give some of the other money to Jen and Jeremy, who are truly doing God's work. They're doing amazing stuff. And we can't get there though unless we grow our following quite a bit more. So please, if you have a chance, send this to 2 people that you think would really like it. And that would be really, really helpful. And that would be a great way to show your appreciation for Jen and Jeremy for doing all the work that I don't want to do. What is it? What are you doing? What is this?
There's still time. I'm so tired right now. I'm so tired. I'm like trying to find casual ways to hold my head up with my hands.
Okay.
So I don't have to support it.
Do you have like a chopstick you could like put under your neck or something, under your chin?
I like, if someone offered me one right now, I would probably take it.
Okay. Is this a good time or a bad time to tell you that Jen really went above and beyond, and there's a lot of research here. So it's gonna be,
hear 2-part episode.
It's not impossible. We will see. You let me know when you've had enough for tonight, and then I'll let you know if it's going to be a 2-parter or not.
You sound like my wife.
Feels uncomfortable.
I was actually gonna congratulate both of us for taking the high road here, and choosing not to tell our many and sundry advertisers on this podcast to, quote, go fuck themselves, as
our friend Elon
just did moments ago.
I do, and you know what? I got to tell you, I get the impulse. I get it. Yeah. I get not with our advertisers, but you know,
obviously, but with advertisers in general, sure.
Yeah. Well, that's a choice, huh? It's a strong choice. And you're right. We should be commended on our decision to not ever tell our advertisers to fuck off. It's weird that Twitter is dying.
It's very strange. I figured it would die in like a totally different way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess this makes as much sense as any.
Sure. It's as fun as any other way to watch.
It really is. I mean, it's really compared to all of the other, like, I'm not entirely sure how this thing could make money. It just seems like a thing where people exchange ideas and nobody gets charged anything. I guess all of those products eventually do like get shittier and shittier until they just sort of collapse. So yeah, this is at least kind of an exciting way for it to go.
It's a very public way to do it, for sure.
Yeah,
which is not always the case.
Yeah. It's kind of like that abandoned house on your block. You're like, man, that thing's such an eyesore. And then one night it catches fire, and you're like, this is dangerous. Yes,
but I am going to stand in the yard and watch it.
I would prefer if this happened by other means, but
and it's effective.
Yeah,
and it is effective. Yeah. So if you're listening and you've been thinking about, you're doing a whole will we, won't we of reaching out to us about whether or not you should engage in a sponsorship with us. We're here to tell you, we almost certainly will not publicly tell people that you should fuck off.
And I'm just saying, anyone out there who is pulling advertising dollars out of Twitter, looking at you, Disney. You got to spend the calendar year is coming up pretty quick here, and you got to spend those dollars. Otherwise, you don't get them in next year's budget, Disney.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Consider it.
Use that tax write-off. So hey Bob, this is just for us now, Bob. It sounds like you're maybe not spending your money on Twitter anymore, Bob. And you know who loves Disney, actually? These two guys, these two mugs. We talk about Disney all the time. We love that. Patrick, what's your favorite Disney thing?
Favorite Disney thing ever? Watching Moana for the first time with my kids. That was a big one.
Yeah,
it's pretty big.
That's big. My new favorite Disney thing is I learned that people actually have died at Disneyland, and I learned about that last week, and it's fun. It's cool. No, why are we shaking our head? No, Bob, no. Bob, my favorite thing about Disney is
also Jeremy. Quick note.
Jeremy, that's a Dr. Brown. No, Bob. No, that's no. So stupid.
Yeah.
That was Patrick's kid saying that. Not me. So anyway, God, stop, anyway, child.
So yeah. So anyway,
the magic I think is my favorite part.
So now that we've fucked it up with Disney, I want to talk directly to the Pringles people because I know.
Hey Jim.
I know Jim Pringles is out there right now wondering where he's going to spend all this money.
That's right.
Twirling his enormous pineapple-sized mustache and just wondering.
It's way too big of a mustache, right? I mean,
it is. It's already a round face. That's a problem.
Yeah, it's a melon face.
Yeah.
And I guess the mustache doesn't look bad on that face, but if you put it on a real face, it's too big of a mustache.
Yeah, exactly. How do you even
do that?
Yeah. I mean, how do you get the Pringles into the mouth below the mustache at that point?
That's another good question.
I mean, that mustache, probably at this point, mostly Pringles.
Maybe it wraps around the Pringles. Like the way that when we were kids, did like the duck mouth with Pringles. That's probably like wrapped around in hair on that guy's face. That makes a lot of sense.
We might be losing Jim now too, honestly.
What? Oh God, what other?
We should just move on. I'm sure they'll come to us.
Tim Cook, listen.
Yeah.
And so we already thanked Jen Swanson, but we need to thank someone else. We want to thank this topic tonight was recommended by a listener in the UK, one of our good friends over there, who claims that his name is Andy Starbuck. Now that's clearly fake.
Yeah. Like big Moby Dick fan, obviously.
Yes.
But I don't think you'd get to pick your name.
Or BSG, but yeah, you can't. No. So Andy Starbuck, whatever your real name is, thank you for sending this topic along. It's really great, and good luck to whatever it is you're running from. Wish you the best of luck. But Andy did suggest this, and it's a real corker, as I think they say. So are you ready to hear a ghost story?
I'm ready to hear the corker.
Let's get going. Richard. I even practice this. Okay, let's try again. Okay. Richard Plantagenet. Richard Plantagenet.
That sounds better.
That's a clean one, right? I'm sure Jeremy will make that the only one. Richard Plantagenet was born on October 2nd, the year 1452 at, this can't be right, Fotheringhay Castle.
Fotheringhay.
One word again.
Sure.
Yeah.
How does one fother?
I
mean,
it's like you have a child, right? It's your sire.
Right.
But you did a bad one.
Okay.
So you don't want to be like, I'm not your father, I'm your faux-thers. Yeah. I'm your fake father. Please don't come over here and pretend to be one of mine, because I think it's probably how that works.
I can see that. I don't know if faux-thers was maybe like father you were constantly in like opposition to. Like,
oh yeah, I think it's
Darth
the same
Vader.
thing. That's the same.
Yeah.
Regardless. Yeah. Sorry, Darth Vader was what?
Luke's faux-thers. Get it? Because he's a faux. All right.
Yeah,
all right.
I got it. I wanted you to
explain the whole thing.
You delivered, and that was great. Fotheringhay Castle, interestingly enough, was in Northamptonshire. Northamptonshire.
Back again.
We're back in. We can't get out. So Richard was the son of Richard, who was a Duke of York, and his wife, Cecily Neville. So Richard, the young Richard, was the 11th.
Little Richard, by the way.
I have that in further down. And then I thought, like, before we record, I should go and remind myself, like, one Little Richard song to make a joke about. And then I forgot. So Jeremy will just cut some in, I'm sure.
Sure.
So Little Richard was the 11th of 12 children.
Oof.
How many of them do you think survived?
I'm 50% rule. I'm gonna say 6.
You are correct. 6 of them survived.
Yeah, I'm getting this. I'm getting it.
That's right. And Richard was the youngest of those 6. Now the Plantagenet family, God Christ, they're a whole thing. So they were family. This is a whole family tree, but they were divided within that family tree into 2 houses. Very Game of Thrones.
Okay.
They were divided into the House of Lancaster and the House of York.
Okay.
So it's like your cousins that you don't like are the other ones.
Okay, but they're all on their own, all on their own team.
You would think so, yes. I mean,
Sure.
they should be. They're supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean this is kind of how families work. It's just kind of formalized. It seems like.
That's right. Again, Christmas is coming up. I think we could all relate.
Yeah.
So
I want to go to the Lancaster Christmas. We have to. Your grandmother's dying.
I would die too if I had to keep going to Lancaster Christmases. So Lancasters and the Yorks, they don't like each other very much, even though, again, they are all family. Now, little Richard was part of the House of York. And his father was a Duke of York. I think I mentioned that already.
Mm-hmm.
So his father was basically the leader of the house.
Okay.
Master of the house. Now, there is so much boring history here. We are going to talk about a lot of it, unfortunately. I'm sorry to say, but we're going to cut out a lot of it too. Another shout out to Jen, though, because she really brought all the history, which makes me think she doesn't actually listen to this podcast, maybe because that's not really what we do here. But she gave me all the choices of historical events to choose from. There were like 7 pages of notes. So thank you, Jen. And also please stop doing that, Jen. So there's a lot of really boring history here. We are going to talk. So basically Henry VI at this time was King of England, but Big Richard, the Duke of York, he was like, well, I think I should be the king.
Sure.
Because I think you just do that. You just say like, no, I want to be king.
Yeah. That's how it worked back then.
I think so. I think it's how it works now. Like if you're like, hey, Charles, you suck. Your hands are too big. What's going on with your fingers, bud? I should be the king because my hands are normal. And that should be a prerequisite. You can just go and say, hey, Charles, I'm king now. And then challenge him to a joust.
Mm-hmm. Or to just like a pushing over contest.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to win. Yeah. So Richard wants to be king, and Henry, who was actually king, he was a Lancaster. So again, they are related. They are blood, but the Lancasters, again, they don't like each other. And the Lancaster family is like, you can't be king. We're king. Our guy is king. So you can't just like be king, Richard.
Right.
Dick. And Richard is like, okay, well, I have an idea. Let's fucking fight about it.
There we go. And nothing else to do.
Correct. It's got to be so. I mean, there's no TV to watch. There are no reruns of Friends to gorge yourself on.
If you like think of a really interesting quip, you have no one to text it to.
Oh, God,
so
can you imagine? God,
all these really funny things are rattling around in my head while I like dig in the middle of a field 17 hours a day.
And they probably don't know how to write them down.
Yeah. So misery. Let's fight.
So this begins the War of the Roses.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which I'd certainly heard of and probably learned about, but had no memory of other than the fact it was called War of the Roses. So I learned a lot here. So it was called the War of the Roses because the houses of York and Lancaster, both, all these Plantagenet houses, they both used roses as their sigils.
Out of all the things.
Yes. Like we're related. We're going to use the same thing, but it's going to be a little different.
Oh, okay.
So the York used a white rose and Lancaster used a red rose.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that's pretty different. Even so.
It is. Although I feel like if you really want to stick it to your family, like you don't, if they're a rose, what is the thing that eats roses? Lawnmowers?
Anything. Like literally. Yeah. It'd be great if you're like, okay, we're going to battle and we're both going to bring our rose flags, right? You're white, I'm red. Yes. And then you show up and they're like, wait, yours is a tiger. Yeah. Fuck off.
Yeah. Roar. Kill. So they're at war for a very long time. And there is a lot to say about the War of Roses. Again, we will talk about a lot of it. Certainly not all of it. But you should know it started in 1455 and lasted for more. It's a series of wars and battles. Lasted for more than 30 years total.
Oh, man.
Yeah. So you think your holidays are bad. Could be worse. What do you think your house sigil would be?
This house? Gosh. I'm going to say probably a bag of Takis and a box of uncooked Aldi pasta. That's I think that'd be it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I be vulnerable with you for a second?
You're being vulnerable with everybody, but yeah.
Oh, that's a
Sure.
good point.
Go ahead. I'm interested. What's
I'll
your
put it in
house sigil?
chat. I'll put it in chat. And you can decide whether or not to read it out loud.
And I can just read it. I'm just gonna read it.
Yeah,
off.
let's put it in chat.
That's fine.
Okay.
Which button's chat?
There you go.
I'm not gonna say that.
It's too embarrassing.
I'm not even gonna say that.
It's true though. I've never had a Taki. I've never tried.
I mean, they
Takis.
have them up there. Like you
Yes,
live.
they do, and they have them at Aldi's where I shop all the time.
Yeah. But
I feel like I don't game enough to do. I feel like if you're gonna do Takis, you have to have like a gaming computer.
my 4-year-old child brings me the bag of Takis.
Yeah, but you have a gaming
empty.
computer.
Well, no, but she brings it to me empty because she's finished the whole thing and she wants another bag of the Takis.
Well,
so,
does she play your gaming computer?
absolutely not. Not with those fingers.
Taki does. They're like Cheetos, right? They're like spicy Cheetos.
They are
not.
Right? Absolutely not.
Oh
no.
See, I don't know.
They're like a tortilla chip, right? What? Except while it is still malleable, they roll it up into a tight little like cigarette, and then they dip it in like the spiciest spices that they possibly can.
Oh, they're tortilla chips.
Essentially.
I know you said that, but I'm I'm Googling it. And
but someone confirms it on the internet, so it must be true.
That's so weird. Who is the CEO of Takis?
Jim Taki, I believe.
Jim Taki cannot possibly be true. The most intense snacks in town. Taki's rolled tortilla chips. I've learned so much in the last 60 seconds.
Do you need to take another break, or are you good?
I think Aldi is closed, so
it is closed. Yeah.
So I'll just push on. Anyway, I don't remember how that factored into any of this. Where was I?
Your house sigil. What was your house sigil?
Oh, my house sigil.
Yeah.
Gosh, I think right now penguins.
Penguins, just
like battle penguins.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be battle penguins. I mean, I don't think they were like battle flowers in the War of the Roses.
Well, no, but I think all penguins are battle penguins.
Okay.
Deep down.
Sure.
Yeah, they're unassuming, but that waddle. God, can you? Okay, so penguins are like the zombies of the animal kingdom in the sense that one zombie is easy to defeat because you just walk away from it very quickly and you're fine.
Sure. Yeah.
But a horde of zombies, that's when things get bad, right?
Yeah. Okay.
That's penguins. So one penguin, you're like, you're gonna waddle at me, it's fine, I'll kick you over. But you get a horde of penguins and they're waddling like this, right? And then suddenly they swarm you and they just and you're getting battered. You're getting battered by a horde of penguins. So those are battle penguins.
I was going to give you the zombie comparison due to their shambling nature. I don't know if I would give it to you because of the herd thing, but Yeah.
Well, the similarity is the shambling, and then the additional similarity is the herd. Yeah, it's okay. Listen, let's leave it up to listeners. Hey, everyone, you weigh in. Well, you go to our Facebook page, go to Instagram, and let us know.
Yeah, let us know what your house sigil is.
Let us know your house sigil, and let us know how where we stand on the whole penguins versus zombies thing. Anyway, so the War of the Roses, it's going to be a 3-part episode. So it lasts for 30 years. And one fun fact is that during this whole time, King Henry was captured, quote, multiple times.
But it's being captured by like your cousins. And it's like,
so
what are they going to do?
All right, get out of here, you scamp. And they like smack him on the ass with their sword. And they're like, come on.
Don't tell your mom about this. All right, go back home.
She's my godmother, and I really need that Christmas present. I really want a PlayStation 5. So at some point, the English Parliament, during all these wars, the English Parliament was like, we've decided you cannot just say you're going to rise up and overthrow the king. So it took us a while, but Richard, we've decided you're a traitor. We all decided, Richard, you're kind of doing a coup here. We don't like that.
That's fair.
Which I think makes a lot of sense. And so Richard's like, better run. So he does, and he flees to Ireland.
Okay.
Yes.
And they famously don't get along. Like,
I don't
they really don't.
Well, at this point, they might still. I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
what year it was that they really, really didn't. But they may or may not get along.
Mm.
They might be
not,
like,
yeah,
go fuck yourself. Go back to England, you fucking fuck. Which I think is how they refer to the English these days. But he goes to Ireland, and Richard's oldest son, not Richard.
Mm-hmm.
Richard was his youngest surviving son. His oldest surviving son was named Edward. Now I know what you're thinking. Edward was also the name of the king. That's correct. And this is a different Edward. This is Richard's Edward, not King Edward.
This is so many identical names to keep track of.
You are going to blow your brains out. This is one of 1,000. Just hang tight. So Richard's son Edward was like, that's not cool. You can't chase my dad out of England. And he takes up dad's cause. So now Edward, son of Richard, he's going to the battle. He wants to take down King Edward.
Right.
And so this Edward, he pairs up with a man named Richard Neville, who I believe was related to his mother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Cecily Neville?
Yeah, I think that's right. Cecily
Neville?
Man.
Is that right?
Did you do it? Did you?
No.
Cecily, wow, you did a great job. Do you want to refill your glass? Because this is weird.
After that, I might just drain it.
So he pairs up with Richard Neville. So different Edward and different Richard get together and they pair up and they fight King Edward. And they win a big battle on July 10th, 1460. And this is during that battle, they capture the king again.
They put him back in his normal prison cell.
Yeah. Oh, I've lost my track. No, the king is Henry. God, there are so many Edwards and Henrys and Richards. Okay, so anyway, Richard's son Edward pairs up with different Richard, and they get King Henry. Boy. And they throw King Henry in the Tower of London.
Okay.
And so he's basically in prison now, and everyone, has got to be sitting around like, Jesus Christ, can we just can y'all please just settle this? Like, we can't keep such whiplash.
All these battles are destroying the crops that I need to live.
We just want to farm this literal poop on our land, please. And so now King Henry's locked up. So now Big Richard can return from Ireland. So he goes and he visits King Henry in the Tower of London. And they talk. And Henry is like, okay, you know what? You can be king. Fine. You win. You can be king. I don't want to be king anymore. This sucks. I've been captured at least twice. I don't like it. You can be king. So Richard, Duke of York, officially becomes heir to the throne. Now, I don't know exactly how this works. Like, I think Henry is still technically king because he's still alive. But he makes Richard heir to the throne, which doesn't seem like a good idea because then Richard has a whole lot of incentive to just cut your head off.
True. Yeah.
So I just, England is so stupid. But so Richard becomes heir to the throne. But in a twist, Richard, Duke of York, now heir to the throne, a few months later is killed during another battle, killed by an army that is led by King Henry's wife, the Queen, Margaret.
Ooh.
Which is real badass. And this is not her first campaign. That was part of the history I cut because we just don't have time. But the Queen was like, fuck this. I am going, and she like raised an army and she led these armies against the other, I don't know, her married cousins or whatever. Anyway, so Richard dies, Duke of York dies, but he was officially heir to the throne. And so now technically his oldest son, Edward, is the new heir to the throne.
Okay.
Even though again, the king who is not his dad is still alive.
Right.
And I don't know, some stuff happens. I couldn't focus on it because it was so boring. But then eventually, so Edward is now crowned. He's crowned King Edward IV on June 28th, 1461. So now...
Is Henry dead? Does Henry die?
Or
is he just like...
Gosh, I might get into that. Maybe.
Probably.
There are so many Henrys. They all die. You know what? He's dead now. He's not here to defend his name.
On a long enough timeline, they're all dead.
He must be dead. Anyway, so Edward is now the king. So the royal line has now shifted from the Lancasters to the Yorks. Again, still the same family, the Plantagenets, but whatever. Anyway, so King Edward IV now reigns, and this goes fine for a few years until that the other Richard, who had originally helped Edward defeat the big Henry,
right?
He was like, that's a whoops. And he's like, I did a bad thing. And he reinstates Henry as king. Oh, so Henry's not dead. He reinstates Henry as king of England. He says, actually, Henry's king again. Now, why he has the power to do that, I just cannot. I cannot. I don't know. Who knows? But he's like, Henry is king of England. And Edward runs away to France. So it's just so stupid. Later, though, is this right? Edward comes back and he wins some other battle, and then he's king again. None of this matters really, right, other than it's just fucking, I don't know. So anyway, so now he's king. Anyway, so this time, Edward, once he becomes king again, he gets smart and he's like, what? We should murder Henry. Like if Henry's dead.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
So this is what happens. They kill Henry.
Yeah. And what about other Richard? What
about still alive, still kicking?
Oh, see, that's a loose
Well, he didn't want to kill
end.
the wrong Richard. He was like, well, what if I there's so many Richards in my life. My brother is Richard, my dad is Richard, this guy's Richard. I don't know what to do.
Mom, get my Rolodex. We're getting them all.
So they kill Henry. Now Henry had a son, but Henry's son had been killed in battle already. So he has no more heirs. So there's no one else to say like, I am the legitimate heir to the throne, because Henry had no offspring. And they locked up the queen because she was kicking everyone's ass on the battlefield. Yeah. So Margaret's locked up. And they said, stop leading kick-ass armies. Yeah. So finally, at long last, the House of York, it's all locked in. Like they're the winners of the War of the Roses. It's done. Edward is king. The Yorks are in power. Everything's great. So now, at long last, we come back to the hero of our story, Little Richard. So Little Richard was, of course, he was Edward's youngest brother, and he had done really well in the war. So he got all sorts of titles. He was very cool. On July 12th, 1472, Little Richard married Anne Neville. Now, Anne Neville was the daughter of that other Richard Neville,
right,
who betrayed his family. Also, somehow related to his mom. This is a cousin, I think.
Okay.
I think he marries his cousin.
Not a lot of people in the world at that point. I guess cousins.
There were only 7.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. So Richard had this daughter, Anne. She marries Little Richard Neville has a daughter who marries Little Richard. Yes. And then Anne had also, fun fact about Anne, she had also been the wife of King Henry's son, who had been killed in battle. So she was originally married to the original king's son, who died. And now she's married to the new king's brother.
Okay.
Would you like to guess the name of the original king's son who she was first married to?
I have three guesses.
That's correct.
I'm gonna guess Richard.
Nope.
Damn. I'm gonna guess Edward.
Yes. So it's another Edward. But he's dead now, so she's single. So she marries Little Richard, which, again, this is so stupid. But the upshot of this for Little Richard is he acquires a whole lot of land.
Okay.
Because she had inherited the prince's lands, and now he is taking over those lands. So yes, so. And Little Richard and Anne had one son, and they named him Edward.
Fuck my God. Damn it.
How are there no other names? It's just, oh God. So So okay, so here are my notes. I'm trying to make sense. So other Richard, so other Edward, King Edward, who is Richard, son of Richard's son Edward's uncle Edward, was a pretty good king.
Sure.
In terms of stability and stuff.
Whoever he was.
The current king, Little Richard's older brother, Edward, is a pretty good king.
This is definitely the point, like in my when I'm cramming for my history test, like an hour before, that I just start crying. This is just absolutely, just absolute misery.
It's just so stupid. And now the way that they teach American history makes a lot more sense. Like, let's just not deal with any of this because it's all so dumb. And
I feel like, I feel like history professors are like, you know what? We broke away from these guys for exactly this reason.
This is mostly why. It was not actually about tea. It was because there were too many Edwards and Richards.
Yeah.
So King Edward is pretty good in terms of stability, but that doesn't last. So before long, Little Richard, hero of our story, starts to question his brother's kingly decisions. So Richard didn't love the idea of being peaceful with France. Edward really liked being peaceful with France for fucking who cares. But Richard just really wanted to fight some French people. And, hey, who among us has not wanted to do that?
I really want a free trip to France, and I know this one secret trick to get a free trip to France, and it is invading France.
Richard also thinks that Edward's wife, whose name is Queen Elizabeth, sucks real bad. He thinks that she is she's basically like giving Edward bad advice to kind of make him side with her family instead of his family.
Oh, well, okay.
Which may or may not be true, but
yeah.
So Richard's not happy, but he loves his brother, so he doesn't like try to kill him or anything. He decides to step away from the royal court and go focus on his own life. He goes to be a farmer somewhere.
Wow. Okay.
Live a quiet life in the northern country of England. But that's not going to last. On April 9th, 1483, King Edward IV, he falls very ill and he dies at the age of 40.
Ooh, wow.
And you might be wondering, like 40, even for back then, is kind of it's an early death.
I mean, like personally, 40 is when everything kind of started to hurt for me.
Yes.
But I didn't feel like I was going to die. Well, I guess I wouldn't have been surprised if I died. Put it that way.
Yeah. Here's a quote from somebody. Quote, his physicians attributed this in part to a habitual use of emetics. You know what an emetic is?
I do not know what an emetic is, please.
It's something that they give you to throw up so that you will vomit.
Oh, like an ipecac or something like that.
Yes, exactly. Okay. So his physicians attributed this in part to a habitual use of emetics, which allowed him to gorge himself at meals, then return after vomiting to start again. And I guess that's not healthy. I don't know. I'm going to have to have some serious considerations about my life. If that's not okay.
Yeah. Probably pretty rough on the whole, like on the whole mouth to stomach system, I would imagine.
I mean, basically every system, I would think.
Yeah. Not
good. So they think that had something to do with like the whatever illness it was getting into his system. But anyway, so he did have a son and an heir, whose name was also, of course, Edward.
Sure, why not?
So Edward V. But Edward V is only 12 years old at this point. And Edward IV was like, that's a little young.
Yeah.
So on his deathbed, King Edward IV, he names his brother Richard, little Richard, the King Regent. So the King Regent means, and I know this because I watched a lot of Game of Thrones. That means like you're not the king, but you get to act as king until your small child king becomes, of age to be king.
Right, unless if you don't kill the small child king.
Well, I mean, sure.
Accidents happen.
Hey, anything could happen to a small child. Yeah. They get into all sorts of trouble, the little scamps. So you never know.
So he's like trying to introduce his like 12-year-old nephew to Ipecac and things like that. Like, hey, all the cool kids are throwing up after lunch. May as
Dad
well.
did this, pretty cool. He was a cool guy.
That was a totally cool guy right up until the end when he threw his stomach out through his nose. But up until then, he was really cool.
Until then, so cool. So Richard,
he's like the Miles Davis of throwing up his stomach.
If throwing up outside of school is cool, consider me Miles Davis. So Richard is basically the acting CEO of England, and his official title is Lord High Protector of the Realm, which I think is a better title than King. That's a cool
pretty
title.
Cool. That's the title you make up for yourself. That's like, you know what? I'm changing my business card.
And that is
no longer
what I would like to be called now is, in terms of this podcast, Lord High Protector of the Ghost Realm. And please address me as such.
Write that down.
Thank you. All right. So who's ready for some palace intrigue?
Wait. Okay. Sure. Okay.
A few weeks after the king's death, little Richard, who is now Lord High Protector of the Realm, he has dinner with a man named Anthony Woodville.
Anthony? What country must he be from?
Russia, I guess. Anthony was Queen Elizabeth's brother. So brother-in-law to the recently deceased king, who was Richard's brother. And remember, Richard does not care for the queen.
Right.
He thinks her whole family is trying or she's trying to get her whole family to kind of take power. Now, her full name is Elizabeth Woodville. And so Anthony Woodville is her brother. And it turns out that Anthony Woodville, okay, I'll just read what I wrote. Richard learns that Anthony Woodville and King Edward's half-brother, who we've not heard about yet, whose name was confusingly also fucking Richard.
Oh my God.
So Anthony Woodville and yet another Richard had been spending the last decade or so preparing little Edward for his eventual reign.
Sure.
Okay. And Richard, our Richard, little Richard, our sweet baby Richard, he doesn't like this one bit because he doesn't like the fact that the Woodvilles are like grooming his nephew to be king, because he's pretty sure that that's going to include his nephew like giving a lot of power to the Woodvilles. So he doesn't like that. He's very anti-Woodville. So the next morning, little Richard has Anthony Woodville and bastard Richard, I guess. He has him arrested and imprisoned because he's acting CEO. He's acting king, so he can do that.
Yeah.
So he has him in prison. Then he goes up and picks up his nephew, little Edward V, and he brings him to London. Now, Elizabeth is still queen, but she doesn't have any power, but she still has a title. And she's like, oh no, this is all collapsing very quickly. She goes to Westminster Abbey to hide. And this is all Jen's fault. I would not have used any of this detail. If it were me, this would be a 20-minute episode. But thank you, Jen, for doing this. Little Richard places little Eddie 5 in the Tower of London, but not as a prisoner. I guess so apparently Tower of London is famously a prison, but it also was where English monarchs would stay before their coronation. So it's also like a hotel.
Okay.
So it's a weird system. But anyway, so little Eddie is supposed to be crowned king on June 22nd. On June 22nd, however, the bishop at St. Paul's Cathedral declares little Eddie and his siblings illegitimate. And this is very scandalous. The bishop claims that when King Edward IV, little Richard's older brother, who was recently dead by throwing up, when he married Elizabeth, he was already contracted to marry someone else, and therefore his marriage to Elizabeth was, quote, bigamous.
Oh, null and void.
And illegal, correct. And all their children are officially bastards, and bastards cannot become king.
Ooh, ouch.
Yes. So now the whole kingdom is in fucking uproar because this is such a hot mess, and a whole bunch of lords get together, and they decide, since little Richard, our Richard, sweet baby Richard, is King Edward's last surviving brother, they say, well, Edward's kids they're no longer in line to the throne, so it must go to
Richard,
his brother, to Richard.
Yeah.
And so now they say, Richard, you must become actual king, not just acting king, but like king. Richard offered a, quote, brief symbolic hesitation. And then he's like, all right, you got me. Twist my arm, I'll be king. And this is Richard III. Richard formally imprisons little Eddie and his little brother. So he imprisons his nephew, who is, Fred, little Eddie, and Eddie's little brother. His little brother's name was Richard.
How old is he at this point?
I think like 8.
Yeah.
So he imprisons them in the Tower of London. I feel great about
imprisoning 8-year-old children because they're such a threat to you. Yeah,
it's really not good. They become known as the princes in the tower.
It could be fun if it's like a hotel. You're there with your brother.
Well, it's true. That's true. Like, it depends on which side of the tower you're on, which floor.
Are you on the luxury side, or are you in the rats eating your asshole side? One of the two. I don't know.
Either one could be fun, but and we don't actually know which part of the tower they went to. We just know they were never seen outside the castle again.
Oh, okay. That might be the rat side.
It might be the rat side. And I wrote down fun historical fact. I don't think that's the right way to word this. Here's an interesting historical fact. When the castle's White Tower was demolished in 1674, 200 years later, the workers there found a chest buried in the ground, and they opened the chest, and inside were the skeletons of 2 young boys.
Oh,
so
not great.
Pretty bad. Pretty bad. So Richard, it seems like, although we don't know for sure, that Richard had his nephews killed and then buried in a trunk. So he's a cool guy.
Who among us?
If I had a nickel for every niece or nephew I buried in a trunk.
People in glass houses shouldn't throw stones.
That's
have
right.
you ever buried your nephews in a trunk until they died?
You have. So anyway, so Richard is in charge now. He's king. He's officially king. And a lot of the people are like, I don't know. Suddenly this feels kind of bad. The more we learn about Richard, the more we're not sure.
I was with you until the killing the children part. Then
that was a big turning point.
I drifted. I drifted. I'll be honest.
Yeah. So people start protesting. Now, when people protest, Richard has them executed.
Sure, of course, as you will.
Why wouldn't you? So it's okay for a while. But of course, the Lancasters, they're pretty mad because they, again, on top of all of this, also believe that they should still be in charge of England. And so the Lancasters, their line has been pretty thinned from all the death and murder. But they are now led by a man, a cousin of theirs, whose name is Henry Tudor. You heard of the Tudors?
I have, but why does he get 2 names?
Well, his first name is Henry.
Right.
His last name is Tudor.
Okay. Everybody else just been like single names the whole time. But that's
fine. York and Lancaster.
The whole way.
Yeah, do you want me to go back and name okay, so Edward York, Edward Lancaster, Edward York, Edward York, Edward Lancaster, Richard York, Richard Lancaster, Richard York, Richard York, Richard Lancaster, Henry York, Henry Lancaster, Henry Lancaster, Henry York. Any questions?
So where does Henry Tudor come from then?
I don't know.
He appears out of thin air.
I'm trying real hard to make this a 1-episode show. Gosh, where are we here? So the Tudor dynasty is about to start. The Tudors come up. Anyway, so the Tudors, they start really riling people up about Richard III and how much he sucks. And Richard and his wife, Anne Neville, they're like, well, people are really starting to not like us very much. So they do, what any sane person would do. They go on a PR tour of the kingdom. So they do a lap.
They go on Diane Sawyer. They talk to her for a little while.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. I've seen this before. They make a Netflix special.
Mm-hmm.
They talk to
and
David Beckham.
They dab their tears a little bit.
Yeah.
And, so they go around, and part of it is actually just to tell people like, hey, I'm your king, which at first I thought was so stupid, but then makes a lot of sense. Like, how else would you know who your fucking king? Like, and also, who cares? Like, are you gonna help me dig this corn out of the ground? No, okay, great, fuck off. Like, I don't care if you're king. But they go around telling people like, just so you know, I am king. So if anyone asks, it's legitimate, and I'm king.
Yeah. If any armies come through here, you let me know.
Yes, please send a letter. So they
also please learn to write and read.
Oh no, I didn't think this through.
Okay, how about this? I will tie a string to your foot, and the other side will be tied to the castle, and you pull on it if you see an army coming. All right, good.
3 pulls means army. 2 pulls means no army yet. Good luck. So they go on this tour. They're like giving away money. They're paying off people's debts. So this is they're really like, hey, everyone, we're great.
Yeah, we are like Oprah.
Yes, nice. Exactly. Yeah. But the people a lot of them have heard about the 2 princes who are like being held in the tower and maybe have been executed. And so part of it too was they were going around saying like, I know you might have heard about my nephews. Like, just so you know, they're fine.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
They're totally fine. They're snuggling right now.
They are snuggling, and it's not okay. So the people aren't really necessarily buying it. Like, obviously some do, but some are like, I don't know. This doesn't feel good.
It's like a weird thing to come out to my field to tell me. Just honestly.
You just got mud on your boot for the first time in your life to tell me that you didn't murder your nephew. I don't know. That doesn't feel right. So they're not really having it. And then Henry Tudor, he's got the wind at his back. He's like, people are pissed. He rises up and he fights to claim the throne. And officially, the War of the Roses, it's back on, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tigers versus roses.
Yeah.
I love it.
Wait a minute. I thought it was roses. Roses? No.
No. I'm done with that roses v roses shit.
Tigers versus penguins. So on August 22nd of 1485, the Tudor army marches to meet the King's army at Bosworth Field in Leicestershire, which I'm sure they pronounce Leicestershire, but it's Leicestershire. It's Leicestershire.
It's wild to me that it still takes another 200 years before people are like, I'm just going to sail into the abyss to get away from this. You know?
Can't we just call something like Boston?
Yeah.
Like, is that so hard?
Yeah.
So now there's a big battle between Tudor and the King and King Richard III. And as soon as the battle starts, Richard was abandoned by quite a lot of his allies who were traitors. So that's not good for him. He knows, he's like, I don't think I'm going to win this war because I needed those people and they suck and they're gone. So he's going to lose, but he is so mad at Henry Tudor and he is very determined to kill him with his own sword.
Oh, okay.
Now, this is a very stupid idea because I've seen Braveheart. I know how this works. Like, typically, there are a lot of soldiers between one king and then the other king. Like, there's like a lot of swords.
They usually play at the back. I'll be honest.
And so, but he decides he's going to go for it. So he charges into it and he's just like cutting people down. And it actually goes pretty well. He gets pretty close. He gets close enough to, I think one of the king's footmen, actually is the one who cuts the King Richard's horse out from underneath him.
Oh,
so he had almost made it.
Right.
But then his horse falls and Richard falls then off the horse like this.
Yeah.
And now he's pretty well fucked.
Yeah.
Sometime later, so what was this, 1485? So sometime later, William Shakespeare will write a play called Richard III, And in that play, he will have Richard deliver the line, quote, a horse, my kingdom for a horse, which is specifically because Richard got his horse killed.
Right.
And now he's going to die real bad.
He should be more specific, like my kingdom for a horse that doesn't have its legs cut off. Yeah.
Here's a horse. Like, here's a horse.
Yeah. I know why the Shakespeare guy got so famous. Like
he sucks so
none
bad.
of this makes sense. Yeah. I would be very willing to, for a nominal fee, go back and fix all of this for him.
I think that we should take you up on that. That's great. Yeah. Thank you.
To be or not to be, like this, that doesn't even make sense.
What would you change it to?
To stick around, or
we cool or we not cool? I don't know.
Or to bounce. To stick around.
Existence. Am I right?
Or to bounce. That's the question.
That's it. That's it, bro. I am sure a version of Hamlet exists where someone says to bounce or not to bounce. I would bet my entire life that somewhere that version is happening right now as we speak. Anyway, yeah, so he doesn't clarify, but yeah, horse, kingdom for horse. And anyway, that play is a tragedy for a reason because Richard gets killed real hard. And that ends the battle. So they swarm on Richard, and he gets stabbed a whole bunch of times, and doesn't make it out of that one.
Well,
so Richard III, he is killed. Now his body is displayed at the Church of St. Mary in Newarke, which is like our Newark, except has an E on the end. A superfluous E, I would say. It doesn't make any sense.
Is it a travel hub?
Yeah. Southwest loves it. And if you get there, you can pretty easily take a bus to York.
Yeah. I mean, like there's a bus that goes to York. I wouldn't say it goes real quick.
No, but
there is a bus that goes to York.
Newarke is there.
Yeah.
So he was displayed at the church. He was naked, quote, except for a piece of cloth. Which
aren't we all?
I mean, it could be. That's right. It could be covering his whole body. Could be covering his member. Could be covering a foot.
Could be covering all those horrible stab wounds.
If you had, let's say, a 12-inch by 12-inch piece of cloth to cover a part of your body when you died, would you put it over the? Don't say it wouldn't fit. I see your face. Where would you put it? Okay. So sorry, I asked. So he's displayed. He's naked, but for cloth. And then his body was buried at Greyfriars Abbey in
Leicestershire.
I'm just gonna say Leicester. Yeah,
that's right. Still nude. Still a nude burial, or they?
Well, it's got a piece of cloth.
Well, okay. Minus piece of cloth. Still nude.
I think probably. I don't think they probably dressed his dead body. That's gross. That's a cadaver.
Is it grosser than undressing a dead body?
No, but if you already done the work to undress it, you don't want to.
True. Yeah.
That's enough. That's enough.
I do love they displayed this at church. Like, can you imagine? We're gonna have a proper Catholic funeral. Step one: strip the body nude except for a thin piece of gauze over the member.
Hey man, God knows what he made.
Yeah,
he's not ashamed. He knows he gave Richard a little tiny baby penis. That's fine.
Dust to dust, nude to nude.
That's right. So the body is then buried at Greyfriars Abbey, and so that's fine. And everyone is like, everyone he's buried at Goodfriars. Like everyone, that's established history. Like it's locked in. Everyone since that time, since the 1400s, we've always known that King Edward III has been buried at Greyfriars Abbey.
King Richard III?
What did I say?
Edward, but we can cut it out.
Yep, Richard III. There are just so many. Yes, King Richard III is buried at Greyfriars. And we know that for sure. No questions.
Okay.
Buried at Greyfriars Abbey.
I mean, like...
There's no problem.
Is there a picture?
Soon.
Sure.
Now, the problem is that everyone knows that he's buried at Greyfriars, but the bad news is no one knows where Greyfriars is anymore. So we know
Probably
for
under the
sure.
target. We think it's under the target, but we're not entirely sure.
Uh-huh.
And
Uh-huh. So we definitely know he's buried at Greyfriars Abbey.
okay.
And we really wish we knew where that was now, because we do not know. So that info was lost during the English Reformation in the 16th century.
Okay. Yeah, they were like, big churches, tear them down.
Yep.
Just level it all.
It's so weird because we know, like, Richard III is a big deal. Like, he was a big, this, you know, this history, we went through it because it's a big deal.
Sean Connery plays him, for God's sake. I mean, it's
exactly. So he's a real deal, but no one knows actually where he's buried. Just that he's buried somewhere. Until the year 2004.
Wow. Okay.
So
big
put
fast
yourself
forward here.
back in 2004. Yeah.
2004. Okay. I was senior in college.
Uh-huh.
So I was very lazy, obviously.
Uh-huh.
I met you, probably, right?
I think 2003 we met. Yeah.
3 or 4. Yeah. I probably didn't like you until 2004, though.
Correct. That makes sense. Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
So big year for me. Yeah. Big year.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Yeah, this podcast really owes itself
a lot to that year. Yeah.
To 2004. So
yeah. My note here is that you and I were hard at work drinking pints of vodka on the clock at Blockbuster.
Sorry, Henry. I'm so sorry.
No, you're not.
Now Blockbuster is bankrupt, so there's
that didn't have anything to do with us, probably, though, right?
Yeah, statute of limitations ran out on that, I'm sure, a long time ago. But yeah, that was
but
definitely
that is definitely what we were doing for most of 2004. So while we were in the back room doing swigs of pints of pop-off, boy, what a time. Meanwhile, a woman named Philippa Langley, she goes to visit a parking lot in England.
Wait,
now, Langley is a bit of an amateur historian.
Okay.
She's a filmmaker who suddenly gets very interested in King Richard's story. She read a book and she was like, wow, this is crazy. I never knew any of this happened. She certainly knew that his body was lost and buried somewhere in England, as none of us knew. So she reads that and she's interested. She becomes what I think is called like a Richardian, which must be a word that she has made up. She starts studying King Richard. Now,
that could be any Richard, though. Honestly,
well, that's true.
You got a 50-50 shot of like studying half of English history. Like, does she oppose the Edwardians?
I mean, yeah, yeah, right. You're Edwardian and you're Richardian. So, so she's studying Richard. Now, over time, scholars, and of course, there are people who are actually studying, like in a serious way, Richard III.
Yeah, without making up names.
Yes, they have identified a handful of places that they think may be Richard's final resting place. Now, of course, no one knows for sure, but they're like, well, based on these texts and blah blah blah. Here are a handful of places that we think Richard might be buried. 3 of the places they have identified as potential places are parking lots.
Seems pretty easy. I mean,
yeah.
Pay for parking for the day. You bring a jackhammer and you start just popping holes in the place.
Well, so Philippa Langley, she goes to the parking lots, all 3 of them, and she goes to one of the parking lots and she walks to the northern end of the lot and she feels what she called, quote, a strange sensation come over her. And she looks down at her feet and she finds herself standing on a parking spot that is reserved. It's, as many parking lots have reserved spaces, right?
Sure.
Now, this spot is reserved, and to mark it as a reserved spot, someone, the owners of the parking lot, I assume, had painted an R for reserved.
Reserved. Makes sense. Right.
She goes to that spot. She feels the strange sensation. She looks down. She sees the R, and she realizes intuitively R does not stand for reserved. R stands for Richard. And
is it reserved for Richard?
What? And she realizes Richard must be buried beneath this parking spot.
Because it's reserved for him.
Yes. Is that what you said? Thank you for saying it again, because
Sure.
it's pretty good. Yeah. And according to her, that our quote told me all I needed to know. So she wants to bring a jackhammer and dig this thing up and see if Richard is under this parking lot with an R.
Makes as much sense as anything.
I guess that's true.
Yeah.
So this takes her a long time to convince people to dig up the lot, as you can probably imagine.
Like the guy whose spot that is, like, you're not going to give that up for
he's going to be so mad.
Yeah. So, yeah. He probably works right around the corner. He's been like waiting for that spot for years. So you want to dig this spot up.
You finally got it. Like, fuck off. It takes her a long time. In 2010, so 6 years later, she's working this whole time. She finally gets permission to dig up the space. But the owners of the lot are like, you've got to pay us for this. You have to put the bill and you have to pay us for damages, which makes a whole lot of sense, I think. And so she says, all right, I'm going to find some sponsors. And that takes a while, but it takes about a year. But by August of 2011, she has enough money to hire a ground crew to fire a penetrating radar on the spot.
Oh, like a Jurassic Park. Yeah, of course.
Yes, yeah.
And look at the Velociraptor.
Look at the Velociraptor, with the claws. That doesn't look so scary. Oh, really? It's going to cut your belly open, etc.
Yeah, just like Richard III.
Yes, except they fire their radar on the ground and it finds nothing. There's nothing under the parking lot.
Yeah.
So that comes back and the sponsors pull out. They're like, well, this was fun, but sorry. But Langley is like, this is wrong. I know this is where Richard is buried. I don't know if you've seen the R, but Richard is that's for Richard. And they're like, he's not here. We just did this whole thing. Like, he's not down there.
Yeah. Also, the word reserved.
I don't know if he
also begins with I don't know. Has anyone told you?
Yeah. I know our language is strange and we don't always do it well. We use S's instead of Z's, and that's strange, but the R's, those are normal. Those are okay.
In our language, we can sometimes use the same letter to begin different words. Multiple words, in fact.
But she's like, no, this is definitely where it is. So all the sponsors pull out, which is not better. And so she starts a crowdfunding campaign because she knows that it's down there. So she's going to raise money from all her dumb friends to, please God, give us money to excavate this parking lot. And unbelievably, this works. So there is a Richard III Society, and the members of that group chip in enough to cover the 33,000 pounds it will cost to excavate the lot. And so finally, so she started in 2004. Finally, on August 25th, 2012, the excavation begins. And they dig the first trench over the R. And after a few hours, they find a skeleton. The skeleton is male. It has a lot of sword injuries. It has a curvature of the spine that is pretty unique, that Richard III also had. They bring it in for DNA testing, and those tests show with 99.9% probability, this is in fact the skeleton of Richard III.
Wow. Holy cow.
She has done it. It's so weird. So they find the skeleton of Richard III under the parking lot, and his bones show evidence of 11 injuries sustained at the time of death, at least 3 of which would have been fatal.
Did they describe any injuries due to an excavator, though? Like, is that
lots of caving in of bones that don't normally cave? Arms rendered in twain. Yes. So the spirit of Richard III did seem to actually call out to Philippa Langley, and the area around the parking lot they now know was Bosworth Field, where that final battle occurred between Tudor and King Richard. And as you can probably imagine, the whole thing is an extremely active haunting site. So walking through the area, some people hear the sound of battle trumpets blasting at full volume. Some hear the sounds of entire armies of people marching when there are no people around. My notes are not making sense here. Skip that. Some people feel the physical sensations of being pushed or grabbed while walking across the field. And visitors to the battlefield have reported seeing hooded figures lurking around. And when they approach the hooded figures, they disappear into thin air.
Wow.
Now, near the battlefield is a building called Donington Layheath Manor House.
Boy, that's just a whole bunch of extra words right there.
There is. Now, Richard III is said to have spent his last night in this house. It's a very old house.
Right.
And it was there back then. It's where they think he slept last. And when some ghost hunters visited the house, they felt a strange presence and heard a man's voice. They turned on their recording equipment and they asked, "What is your name?" The voice replied, "Richard." The ghost hunters then said, "Thank you so much for that."
I mean, honestly, you got a 50-50 shot of being right in that case.
Well, and
I don't really. I mean, Edward. Oh, never mind. Yeah. No, that's good.
If you go to the Ghost Hunters site, they are very clear that they are not necessarily saying it's King Richard.
Right.
Because they do admit it could just be a Richard, and that probably lots of Richards have stayed at the house in the last 400 years. But it could be King Richard. And as for the remains of Richard III, they were eventually reinterred at a tomb in Leicester Cathedral. And some people say his spirit can still be felt inside the cathedral. And one woman, Christine Hamlet, ironically enough, visited the cathedral, took some photos of the whole space and the tomb, which is kind of underground. And one of the photos, I'll just show you. I have a photo for you here.
Sure. Love to see this convincing photo here. Really excited.
This is a photo.
What?
Of Richard III's face in a concrete block.
I mean, so what we're looking at right now is a photo of a concrete block, and then someone has kind of like made a voice balloon to zoom in on the concrete block and replace that voice balloon with a photo that's entirely different than the concrete block shown below.
I don't think I would necessarily say that. I think this is...
I see no resemblance between the blown up bubble and the...
Let's zoom in here. There's eye and nose and mouth. It's there.
You're looking at single digit pixels there. I don't really think that's gonna...
And that's there.
I'm not gonna move the needle much.
Okay. So you're not buying this?
Not as much as you would think. No.
Okay. Well, that's very little. So that's disappointing. But anyway, that is clearly King Richard's face coming through the block, and it's irrefutable evidence. And and she felt a presence. She took a lot of photos. When she developed them, she saw that face, and she knew for sure Richard III is there, haunting her unto eternity.
Wow.
And gosh, that's the story of Richard III and that whole thing. What do you think?
That was a lot. There's a lot going on there.
It's a lot of English history.
Yeah, and again, kind of made my choice of which side of the pond I want to live on here. So
it does make a lot of sense. I know last week we made a lot of jokes about England being terrible, and the Witch of Saratoga would rather go die in a Revolutionary War than spend one more second in England, and this reinforces that.
Yeah.
So no regrets, no apologies necessary, and but we do love our UK listeners. You guys are great.
You guys put up a lot of shit.
Yep.
Just in general.
You could come here if you wanted to. Do I have to stay there?
Nothing stopping you.
Yep. And that is the story of Richard III and the God, what is even the Boz? What is the battlefield?
The parking lot ghost.
The parking lot ghost. Yeah, the parking lot ghost.
Yeah, it's a good name.
Oh, Bosworth Battlefield. Parking lot ghost is better.
Parking lot ghost is a little better.
That's a story of King Richard III, the parking lot ghost. And so the notes were taken by Jennifer Swanson this week. Thank you, Jen, so much. Next time, I mean, less history is okay. But this was really great and so wild.
Thank you. English history.
Yeah, and it's my fault. I did point her in this direction because thank you to our friend Andy Starbuck, Wink, whatever your name is. It's a great tip, a wild story. So thank you to you both, but mostly to Jen for doing all this research. And our audio editor is Jeremy Montoya. Jen Swanson also does, of course, our video editing. And Patrick does all the funny jokes. I just read someone else's notes mostly, so I really phoned it in this week. So I love that. And if you love it too, please tell all your friends, tell all your family. We're just gonna keep doing this, I guess. I don't know, forever. So, I guess that means we'll see you next week on Is This a Ghost?